But, he says, there are conditions. These include stopping the execution of all captured prisoners of war, allowing Giroud to take part in negotiations, being arrested.
This is the voice of Allah, representative of the Ashtar Galactic Command, speaking to you.
Rhodesian nationalist leader Bishop Abel Muzorewa has accepted.
In November of 1977, viewers watching the evening news in southern England suddenly heard something no one expected. A voice broke into the broadcast, calm and distorted, claiming to be a representative of an extraterrestrial civilization.
For years you have seen us as lights in the stars. We speak to you now, to send the same as we have done to your brothers and sisters all over this, your planet Earth.
For decades, the incident has been dismissed as a hoax. Yet nearly half a century later, no one has ever been officially identified as the source of the broadcast, and no credible confession has ever surfaced. In the course of exploring Puharich's archives, I found tapes that hint at the possibility that this kind of broadcast wasn't entirely unexpected. On November 26, 1977, during a routine broadcast on Southern television in England, the signal was suddenly overridden for about 6 minutes. The message warned humanity about weapons, conflict, and the need for spiritual evolution, themes that were common in contactee culture at the time. Authorities investigated, but a culprit was never officially identified. Over time, the incident became a cultural curiosity, part prank, part mystery, part folklore. But the story becomes more interesting when you look at what was happening elsewhere at almost the exact same time. In the 1970s, Dr. Andrija Puharich was deeply involved in research into psychic phenomena, consciousness, and alleged extraterrestrial contact. Around him was a network of collaborators, including British aristocrat John Whitmore and psychic Phyllis Schlemmer, who were involved in channeling sessions and communications with what they believed were non-human intelligences known as the Nine. Their work was controversial and strange, and deeply reflective of the broader contact movement of the era. But burying recordings from this period, there were references that caught my attention. While reviewing audio tapes from the archives, I found recordings of a message attributed to the Nine, which appears to tell Whitmore and Puharich that radio and television systems could be interfered with to deliver a message.
Concerning the transmission across your world television airways.
We had a report that there were certain interferences in this country of Israel. Could you tell us what...
We had said that it would be discontinued for 3 of your minutes. Yes. It had been in that of other countries.
Yes.
Also.
I see. That is your goal, to do it on a global basis for
Yes.
3 minutes synchronously. Do you have any plan at all to place some of the civilizations on television screen like LT, Ahuva, etc.?
It will continue for many of your months, and all will be of opportunity, yes.
In fact, there are multiple mentions of this across several tapes, which were all recorded in either 1976 or 1977.
The code that our friend George saw last evening concerning electronics were part of the logs that were shown on the television screen that were being directed from the round room that my sister and I were in.
Mm-hmm. And, of course, other forms of messages can very easily be passed on to him, including a message through television.
We are aware.
There was even mention of a television transmission in Stuart Holroyd's book, Prelude to the Landing on Planet Earth. Stuart spent months with Puharich and his group and sat in on many sessions. One particular session he references in his book here, and it says, quote, "The plan to interrupt television and radio transmissions during the period 18 to 22nd of November was still on, so this was only a few days before the TV interruption in England." These tapes don't explicitly prove the Southern television interruption, but the language is striking, and Puharich, Whitmore, and Schlemmer were all traveling in and around England at the exact same time. Hearing this, and knowing what happened in November of '77, raises questions. I also discovered a recording of John Whitmore discussing the incident shortly after it happened.
Well, I think I'd first like to refer to the recording itself of the complete message. One thing that struck me was that there was in fact nothing threatening whatsoever on the tape, and I was aware that most of the newspaper reports said it was threatening and frightening and so on and so forth, and I just want to point out that that's sort of a projection of the fears onto the material itself rather than the reality. The other point is, and this leads on to the other subject, is that the people who did it would have had to have had a considerable knowledge of esotericism and the beliefs and so on of this field. This looks like something that was very knowledgeable, and I personally believe that there's a lot more to it than was published in the Times. Communications come through a medium in trance, and it has been suggested by other authorities who know nothing about this particular field that if there were to be voice communication with space, it would come either in the form of mediums in trance or in the form of intervention on our media. And in fact, we've been involved in both of these.
His comments don't confirm any involvement, but they show how closely his circle was following this event. And it suggests the broadcast was not just a curiosity to him, but something he took quite seriously. This could all simply be a coincidence. The 1970s were saturated with UFO and contactee narratives. However, this also raises the possibility that someone within Puharich's network may have known about this broadcast and never publicly acknowledged it. There's no definitive evidence pointing to any conclusion, but the parallels are hard to ignore. I can't prove any connection between Puharich's group and the Southern England television interruption, but the existence of these tapes suggests at least one group of people was thinking about the possibility of a message reaching the public right before one of the strangest broadcasts in television history. Was this a coincidence or something more? That's the question that still lingers nearly 50 years later. Let me know what you think in the comments, if you know anything more about this story.